Welcome everyone to today's SIG session. We'll start in a couple of minutes, just give everyone a chance to join. So let's make a start. I'm Joanne, the SIG convener. I'd like to welcome you to today's panel discussion on MarcEdit. Just to let you know, the session is being recorded, so you'll be able to access it on the YouTube channel afterwards, and anyone else who wasn't able to make it will be able to get it there. I'll start off with a brief karakia, then pass over to our presenters for today. Tūtau mai I runa, tūtau mai I rao, tūtau mai I roto, tūtau mai I wahu, kia tū ai te maru tū, te maru ora, ki te katoa, haumie huie tatie. So today we have got 4 presenters, Celeste and Leonard from Wellington City Libraries, and Rowan from Wheelers, and Natalie from National Library of New Zealand. So I'll pass over to Celeste and Leonard to start the session.
Thank you. I'll have a go at sharing my screen. Sorry, guys. Can everybody see that okay? Does that look okay?
We're Leonard and Celeste from Wellington City Libraries. I'm Leonard and part of the technical services team.
Hi, and I'm Celeste. I'm part of our website team, but I used to be Leonard's Cataloguing minion, and I help with regular expressions for task lists on this project.
Yeah. We come to MarcEdit from the perspective of a public library, automating some of our processes, adding ebooks and e-audiobooks to our catalogue, and using task lists to make our lives easier in ways that you might be familiar with. We'd love to hear or see what tasks lists other people run and how you handle these processes.
We thought we'd talk about, oh, sorry, Leonard. We thought we'd talk about 2 ways that we've used MarcEdit, kind of an everyday way that helps us, and as well a one-off project that we undertook to get to grips with a mess that we'd made and tidy it up.
The main way we use MarcEdit is task lists for dealing with e-record suppliers by vendors. We have different task lists we use for the formats and vendors, and these make it feasible for us to work with the vendor supplied records on top of all the traditional work that we do. It's a quick and easy process that saves us time and helps us prioritise getting the authority work done on these records, seeing as the additional work that's arrived in the past 10 years or so. MarcEdit tasks help us modify records to a standard we're comfortable with relative to our print editions. It's a really helpful process because new vendor records seem to be arriving all the time. When we have a new vendor supplying these, we take a look at what we want to change, create a task list, and then we're good to go with new batches that arrive. So,
oops, sorry.
Thanks, Gary. So this is just a little demonstration of how we use those task lists. Here's an example of a task list. They're easy to edit, and there's so much versatility in what you can have in them. MarcEdit makes so many things possible. Removing, adding in, and swapping field data around the record set. It's so lovely to be able to automate all the little tweaks we would regularly make to these records. We share these task lists across the team, and once we've run them, we do authority work on name and subject headings, load them into our system, and we're done. We're very interested to see what task lists other people have for these e-resources or how people are using these features. So now this is our one-off big project. Since we've had Overdrive for some time, from some form since the late noughties, and we had a variety of different records on our system for these resources. We've had lots of different generations of records on our system from different approaches, and we needed to exercise Great Aunt Gertrude from our catalogue. Hopefully we're not the only ones with a sink full of dirty dishes, and some of this is sounding very familiar.
So here we are in 2021. We'd had 10 years of different sets of records and we'd made a great big mess. All our different past approaches meant that we had quite a complicated set of records to come to terms with once we needed to make some bulk changes. And MarcEdit and all its tools has made this process so much easier. This is us embarking on our project at the beginning. So we had a bit of sorting to do and MarcEdit really came to our rescue. Dealing with all these different sets of records was a bit like wrangling family at Christmas time. To be able to fully utilize Overdrive integration in our discovery layer, we needed to have the right information in our 856 and 037, and we had a lot of interesting information in there. We used MarcEdit to do a lot of stock taking before we did any work, and it was an amazing tool for this. We mainly used the Edit Selected Records tool to search within the fields that we were interested in, and also just to have a look around the record for other places that we knew the data might be lurking. We had an overall flexible approach. There was what we expected to be there, and then there was what we found as we explored and took stock. We did lots of checking what we'd done as we went, and also using the Modify Selected Records tool. And yeah, it was a really great thing to have in our toolbox. Eventually, we did have a set that we had left to do by hand that needed special attention, things like records, other language records. But yeah, we had 57,000 records that we needed to sort out, and about 50,000 of these MarcEdit helped us resolve, and then Leonard dealt with the rest. Sorry, Leonard. So yeah, here's an example of us using Modify Selected Records tool to find records with more than 1037. This was part of our stock taking process and just delving into what we had across our records. And we're also really aware that a lot of this will be things that are kind of old hat for other people, but just from a public library perspective, this was so helpful for us. It's incredibly handy. You can look for records that have more than one field. Just in the example in the slide, you can see everything pops onto one line. So even if you have more than one 037 in this example, they get joined onto the one line with a little downpipe, and you can search for these just in the little box. You can also use the tool from either inside of the Marc editor or from the main menu, and you have different options with both of those to kind of delete, extract records from a file, etc. You can also use regular expressions in your matching and handily select the inverse set of records to your search. Using it from inside of the record, the editor, sorry, you can extract records out, make small changes and merge back in. But yeah, we mainly just used it to get a picture of our records. We didn't save changes back. We used a different tool to do that. Yeah, so once we'd done all of our stock taking and kind of separating and organizing our different messes, our solution where we were able to was to delete the problematic fields and merge in new fields from a fresh set of Overdrive MarcExpress records. And to do this, we used MarcEdit's Merge Records tool. If you haven't had a play with this tool in MarcEdit before, I just popped a couple of screenshots in here of what the different options for the initial screens look like. And yeah, like we said, we're really aware that probably everyone else is really familiar with this tool, but it was just such an amazing thing to have available to us to solve this problem. The first kind of field here on the left-hand side is your file with the records that you want to merge into, and the second is the file with the match and the info that you want to merge in. And you can see there that there are options for what fields you can match the records on, or there's also a best match Mark 21 option with some set options that you can configure. And actually playing with this, we discovered that you can also overwrite the options above and just enter any other field and subfield that you want to use as a match identifier, and that you've got your data consistently in. Although you might not want to do this, and we didn't want to do this either, we just thought it was quite an interesting, non-intuitive discovery. We used a fresh set of MarcExpress records, but if the information that you want to match and overlay in isn't actually in a Marc record set and it's in a spreadsheet or another text delimited text file, you can also use MarcEdit's delimited text translator to create kind of mini Marc records that you can use as your merge file.
Okay. So MarcEdit can be hugely useful for dealing with vendor records. We can repair their consistent inconsistencies. MarcEdit can help us explore and evaluate record sets and tidy up any untoward mistakes that you've made over the years. If you'd like any further details of our dirty laundry and how we cleanse it, please get in contact with us. Or if you'd like to have a look at what our task lists are that we've created for our vendor supplied records, do get in touch.
And yeah, like we said, we'd be very keen to find out what other people's task lists look like and see if we can glean anything from them for ours as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste and Leonard. That was very interesting. You certainly used MarcEdit to a lot more than what we do here, so it was very interesting to see. So we'll now pass on to Anne to find out how wheelers use MarcEdit.
Kia ora tātou. Ko reni toto tamonga, ko waitamata te awa, no tamaki ahau, ko Rowan toku whanau, ko Anne toku ingoa. I thought that I would talk to you today a bit about how we use MarcEdit at Wheelers. I'll just share my screen because I've prepared a slideshow with nice pictures, more exciting than looking at a talking head. Okay, so as has been covered by Leonard and Celeste, MarcEdit is a tool for making a whole batch of changes to a set of Marc records. And I really hope, Leonard, that the vendor records that come from Wheelers are considerably better than the ones that you're receiving as your ebook records, because we work really hard to make that happen. At Wheelers, we've got a particular need for this capacity, since we have a lot of customers who have their own localizations that they want applied to the bibliographic records that we supply to them. No surprises, these are different for every single customer. We use MarcEdit to create a task list which automatically makes these changes to each batch of bibliographic records for each individual customer. That means our team don't have to remember all of the changes for each individual library, and we can be confident that all of the required changes are made every time. I thought I'd run through some of the transformations that we apply and the different MarcEdit change commands that we use to do them. This isn't a complete list for any one customer. It's a sample set for different kinds of data transformations that we do. There are also some structural data cleanup changes we apply, like deleting stray spaces at the ends of subfields, which we routinely apply to all extracts, but they aren't very exciting to look at. The nice thing about MarcEdit is that you can start with the basic commands and get more complex as your understanding of the program grows. There is nothing wrong with taking a couple of bites in the cherry and breaking the command into a couple of steps. I'm going to build some of these tasks into a task list and then show you how to use the Watcher service to automatically apply them. First, we open up the Manage Tasks command, and then edit tasks, remembering to select the task that you want to edit. This is a thing that you will routinely forget to do, and it will say, I don't know what you want me to achieve. On your path to becoming a MarcEdit guru, you will spend a lot of time in the Edit Tasks menu. As you can see, I've set up a task file for these CatSig commands, helpfully imaginatively labeled CatSig test. There is no limit to the number of tasks lists that you can use, or at least I haven't found one yet. And it's perfectly easy to set up some one-off task lists for a single issue in your records. Facilitator was one that we needed for a specific issue, or as a general test bed. You can see one called test in the list. We give our task list a name and a description. What's this task list for? And right at the bottom is the set of commands to add, copy, delete, or modify an individual task. Selecting add gives you all of the options that you could choose to create your task. One of the simplest is edit field, add field task. We use this when we have a simple data transformation task within the same mark tag. In this case, we want to transform the standard LCGFT tag, Readers Publications, to the more customer-friendly local genre heading, Children's Readers. Note that you can add, delete, or edit subfields within this command. In this case, we're replacing the LCGFT in subfield 2, as well as editing the genre text in subfield A. This is a pure text transformation. There are no tricky issues with regular expressions and punctuation being used for multiple purposes. What you type is what you get. This particular example is replacing the whole of the text within the mark field. But you can also use this command to replace just part of the data within the field. Here, I'm looking at the abbreviation PBK in the 020 field and replacing it with the fully spelled out paperback. Note that I've unchecked the match case button, so the replacement will work with a capital P in paperback as well as the small p. And because it's at the field level, it will replace occurrences in the Q subfield as well as in the A subfield. It's just looking for the string PBK anywhere in the 020, anywhere in any line that starts with 020. There are, however, times that you want to be more specific about where, i.e. in which subfield, the change should occur. Edit subfield is your friend here. In this instance, we want to change the V subfield, juvenile fiction, to children's fiction, but we don't want to risk making any unwanted changes in the A or the X subfields in the bibliographic records. Instead of worrying about accidentally changing legitimate headings, I can just specify that this transformation only operates in the V subfield. Note here that I've not specified the final full stop in either the original or the replacement. So it will be retained if it's present in the record. If I had specified the full stop and there happened to be a record without that final piece of punctuation, the change wouldn't operate. As I've said, exactly what you type is exactly what you get. We also want it to apply to all subject headings in the record, not just the 650. We can use the X character in the mark tag as an include all options marker. Note that it's 6XX. If I wanted to only apply the changes to 650 or 651 headings, I could type in 65X. As you can see, there are lots of options down the bottom to do things other than edit subfield data, and I must admit that I have not used all of them. But for example, if you wanted to delete the subfield amateurs manuals, since you'll only have material for popular use in your library, so it adds no value, then you can use this command to delete that specific subfield. See the remove text button? You'll click on this since you want to remove the text rather than add or replace the data. You can see the difference in our task list. Instead of saying subfield edit, this one says subfield remove, so you can track what you're doing. Of course, we can use this delete function at the field level as well as at the subfield level. Here we've used it to delete all headings with the to subfield fast. Many of our customers don't want these in their catalogue. Of course, you could use the same strategy to delete BISAC, Sears or GMD thesaurus headings. Again, you'll click the delete field button to delete rather than add the task. Sometimes you want to add a new field, something that's completely new, rather than replacing something which is already in the record. It may be that you have a local genre heading or a local subject heading that you want to add, or a standard note that you want to apply to records. We can use the add field command to specify both the text and the conditions under which we want the field added. I've given a slightly more complex example here, where a library wants to add the local genre heading French fiction, translations into English, but only where the 041 code is A, English, and H, French, i.e. it's in English and has been translated. Sorry about the cursor placement, that is just FRE there, and it is translations into English. I've just run out of text box space for it to display. There are a couple of things to note here. I've specified the subfield indicator codes at the beginning of the new field. It's an easy trap to forget to add these. The backslash is the default for a space in the indicator positions. I've ticked both the box for add field if present, not present, and use regular expression. The find what box begins with an equals before the mark tag. This is the text editory bit of MarcEdit. It used the equals symbol at the beginning of each mark tag, and it's looking for this combination in your change. Since we've now specified that we're using regex commands, we have to change a bit of the command search structure in the find what box. I've used the regex command dot, any character, and star, any number of times, to fill the gap between the mark tag and the first subfield. I could have just typed out the indicators and spaces, but this is easier and less risky since people do make mistakes in indicator codes. And once again, with MarcEdit, what you type is what you get. If someone's made a mistake in the indicator code, the transformation isn't going to operate. I've done the same thing between the A subfield and the H subfields. Just in case there are multiple A subfields, I'm thinking here of a children's picture book in Māori and English translated from French, where you'd have 2 A subfields. This change would operate on that. We also need to escape the dollar symbol, since it has a regex meaning, using the backslash. We can do this kind of conditional add based on multiple data sets in the 008 field as well, and this is a really common one that we're asked to do. In this case, we want to add the local genre heading teen nonfiction for titles with the audience code D and a literary form code which matches any of the options of 0 nonfiction, E essays, I letters, or S speeches. This approach does require a bit of counting, and you do need to know your 008 code structure or have the Mark 21 specifications sitting beside you as you work. Looking at the 008 field, you count 2 characters of any content. This is the MarcEdit structure. Count 22 characters of any content to get to position 22. Check for code D. Count 10 characters of any content to get to position 33, literary form, and check for either 0, E, I, or S. If all of the conditions specified in the 008 are met, add the local genre heading. Finally, we can go full-on use of regular expressions, which is what Leonard and Celeste were showing us in their task list. This is the most powerful actions within MarcEdit, but it's also the one that's a bit more challenging to start with because it's quite easy to not quite understand what MarcEdit is doing at this point. Regex is a programming language all of its own. MarcEdit has its own flavor of regex, but the basic commands are the same as the standard Perl regex language. There are a couple of great tutorials out there to get you started, and I'm sure that this has been covered in previous SIG programs. In this example, we're using replace all to search for juvenile fiction and replace it with teen fiction in all mark tags beginning with 6, but only where the 008 audience code is D. This is a much more complex search argument. To start with, we've grouped the search and replace into separate capture groups. These are the bits surrounded by parentheses. This means that we can specify that we retain everything in capture group 1, that's $1 here, and replace the second capture group with the new text. Note that there is a \S in the middle of juvenile fiction. That's how you account for a space in this flavor of regex. The use regular expressions box is ticked. The multi-line evaluation box is not ticked. You don't need it for this action, and it does things that you don't anticipate. Right, now we've created a whole lot of actions in our task list. We need to actually consider what order we want them to apply in. The order in which you list the tasks in your task list matters. The actions operate from the top to the bottom of the list, making changes in the record as they go. So if you change a piece of data in task 3 and then want to use it to change something in task 7, your task 7 action won't work. In our task list, we've changed juvenile fiction to children's fiction, and then wanted to change juvenile fiction to teen fiction. You can see the problem. By the time we get to the teen fiction task list, there's nothing left to change in the record. You can see the little arrows at the side of the task list. You can use these to change the order in which the tasks appear in the list, and therefore the order in which they happen. Now, our teen fiction will happen first, and only children's material will be left to be changed by the following command. Testing, 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 1, 2, 3. The biggest challenge with MarcEdit is, like all programming languages, it's absolutely literal. It does exactly what you tell it to. It's really common to set up a task and not get the result you want, or get unanticipated changes, or get nothing happening at all. The answer is test, and test, and test again. Try out tasks in isolation before putting them in a task list to be used for real records. If you get stuck on a transformation, try breaking it down into chunks. Can you get the first bit to work? Then move on to the next. Don't be scared of using the 2 bites to the cherry option. There are no prizes for the most beautiful search argument or for the shortest task list. Now that we've got our task list written, ordered, and tested, we want to set it up to operate automatically. MarcEdit does this using the Watcher functionality, which checks for a file in one folder, applies a task list, and outputs the results into a new folder. This is incredibly useful and saves so much staff time. No need for someone to check for files, apply task lists, hopefully correctly, and save the results. It's really easy to set up the Watcher, much easier than writing the task list to start with. Configure your Watcher settings. We have ours set to operate every 15 minutes, but you can also have them as once a day, or you can schedule a specific processing time to happen at a certain time of the day. Specify the type of files that it's looking for. I've chosen all, hang on, we want to give our Watcher a name. We want to tell it which folder it's going to be looking for files to operate on. We can specify the type of files that it's looking for. So I've chosen all files, but you could, if you have files coming from a particular vendor or a particular source with a particular format of name, you can specify that here, and then the Watcher will only apply on those files, not on anything else that might be sitting in the folder. Specify the output folder, where you want your changed and transformed file to go. And for most of you, that's going to be the location for load to your catalogue, but for us, it's obviously going off to individual customers. Specify the task file to be used. In this case, it's our CatSig test list. Save, and it's done. It's really simple. MarcEdit isn't the only data transformation tool that we use at Wheelers, but it's one of the core ones, and it can be incredibly powerful. If you can specify a set of actions, you can almost always code them into a task list and then run them automatically. I'm happy to take any questions. No? Right, okay, back to you, Joanne.
Joanne, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, I will now pass you over to Natalie, and then we'll have questions at the end, so everyone gets a chance to hear all the presentations first. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Just making sure everything is in the right place. So, kia ora. My name is Natalie Williams, and I'm a collection description librarian at the National Library of New Zealand. I'm going to be talking about using the Export Tab Delimited tool and regular expressions, which both Leonard and Celeste and Anne have mentioned. So one of the tools I use most is the Export Tab Delimited tool. This tool creates tab delimited text files from a set of records in a MARC file with the fields and subfields you've specified. I use it when I want to investigate problems in specific fields across a set of records. Once I've found a problem, I can then bundle up the affected records into new sets for correcting. So what is a tab delimited text file? As the name says, it's a text-based file format used for storing tabular data. Each record is on a separate line and values within a record are separated by a tab. Tab delimited text files can be opened in a number of different programs, including Excel, which is what we're going to use. Let's look at a problem I want to create a tab delimited text file for. So I've been working on a project to correct 007s on records for sound recordings. The 007 field is used for the physical description of the item. So for sound recordings, it includes things like the playback speed, the dimensions of the item, and the kind of material it is made of. I have a set of records for CDs, and I want to check if all the 007s are correct because there appear to be some inconsistencies. I've exported the set of records from my library system as a MARC file, so let's see how to create a tab delimited text file from the MARC file using MarcEdit. Once I've selected the Export Tab Delimited tool in MarcEdit, this is what I see. First, I need to select the MARC file of records as the source file. Next, I enter the name and location I want the tab delimited text file to be saved. There are options for the kinds of delimiters that are in my file, but I don't need to change any of them as the default settings are all correct for my data. Then I move on to the next step. Now I add the fields and subfields I want to have in my tab delimited text file. I can do this by either entering the field and subfield in the boxes or by selecting the field from the drop-down list. I can also specify positions for control fields. When I add fields, they are added to the list above. I select the Normalize Field Data checkbox, as this will remove the subfield markers and indicator data from the text file, which I don't need. Once I've added all the fields I want, I click Export. I will then see a confirmation message saying that the items have been exported to the location I specified. So here's the resulting text file in Notepad. It's interesting to look at, but not much use to me in Notepad, so I'm going to open it in Excel. I open the file from within Excel, and when I'm looking for the file, I have to remember to change the file type to all files, since it's a text file, not an Excel file. When I open the file, this is what I get. As it's a text file, Excel needs more information to know how to handle it. So I make sure the delimited button is selected as it's a tab delimited file. I then change the file origin to Unicode UTF-8 as this will handle any diacritics better. I also select the My Data has Headers box as the first row in the file has the names of the fields and subfields. You can see these in the preview below, although in this view they have all been squished together. On to the next step. This lets me set the delimiters my data contains. As my data is tab delimited, I make sure that tab is selected, and I move on to the next step. Here I can change the format of the data in any of the columns. I change the format in my first column, which contains the 001 fields, but don't need to change the format for any of the other columns. Once I'm happy with everything I've done, I click Finish. And this is the result. I can see the names of the fields and subfields I specified in the first row, and I can see that each record is on a new row. It's important to note that at this point the file is still a text file, so before I start manipulating the data, I want to save it as an Excel file so that I don't lose any of the formatting I do. Once I've done that, I'm ready to start using Excel's tools to manipulate the data to find problems. Here is an example of how I've used data from a tab-delimited text file in Excel for a set I've previously worked on. You can see that I've used color coding, filters, and notes. You could also use any of the other tools in Excel like sorting, conditional formatting, comments, and so on. I find it particularly useful to be able to keep track of any changes I've made, so I know what I've worked on and what will still need to be done. So that's how to use the Export Tab Delimited tool. Now let's look at using regular expressions in the MarcEditor. So Anne's already given us a bit of information about regular expressions, but we'll go over it again. So regular expressions are a string of text that uses a specialized notation to match patterns of text within your data. You can see a couple of examples on the right there. They are essentially a more general and more powerful search or find and replace tool, and are useful because they can match and manipulate patterns of data rather than exact strings. So let's look at a problem I want to correct with a regular expression. Position 3 in the 007 for sound recordings is for playback speed. In my data from my tab-delimited text file, I have found a set of records that has Z in position 3 when this should be an F. Let's look at a regular expression I could use in the Find and Replace tool in the MarcEditor to correct these. So let's think about what I want my regular expression to find. I want it to find 007s with Z in position 3. I don't care what characters are in the other positions. They could be any character. And just a reminder that the 007 field starts from position 0. So position 3 is actually the 4th character, not the 3rd. So there are 3 characters before position 3 and 10 characters after. Excuse me. So there you can see the regular expression I'm going to use. The syntax for regular expressions can be a bit daunting, so let's break it down. First, in blue, I've specified the 007 field. Next, in green, is a period, which is a wildcard and can be any character. After that, in red, I've told it to repeat the period exactly 3 times. So that covers the first 3 characters, which in my case could be any character. Next, I've put a Z because that's what I want to find in position 3. After that, in green, there's another period for any character. And in yellow, I've told it to repeat the period exactly 10 times for the rest of the characters in the field. You might have wondered about the brackets. Regular expressions use brackets to group pieces of fields. For my regular expression, and there goes the light, see if I can turn it back on. So my regular expression is grouped into 3 groups. The first 3 characters in the 007 field in blue, the Z character on its own in green, and the rest of the characters in red. Groups are given numbers and can be represented by a $sign with their number. So when you are using the Find and Replace tool, these group numbers can be used in the replacement text, which will replace any matches on your regular expression. You can rearrange or remove groups in your replacement text, as well as adding in new text. So here's the regular expression and replacement text I'm going to use for my problem. In the replacement text, I haven't included group 2 in green because that's the position I want to replace. Instead, I've put an F in between groups 1 and 3 as that's what I want to replace it with. I'm happy with the other groups as they are and don't need to rearrange either of them. Now that I've constructed my regular expression and replacement text, let's look at using them in MarcEdit. You can use regular expressions in a number of tools in MarcEdit, as we've already seen. You can use them in the Extract and Delete Selected Records tools and in multiple tools in the MarcEditor. We're going to use the Find and Replace tool. In the tool, I enter my regular expression in the Find box and my replacement text in the Replace With box. I have to select the Use Regular Expressions option, otherwise it won't work. And then I click Replace All. And I get a confirmation with the number of modifications that have been made. It's as easy as that. I want to make sure that all of the 007s with Z in position 3 have been updated. I can use the Find tool to search for them using my original regular expression. So I enter the regular expression in the Find What box, select the Use Regular Expressions option again, and click Find. As I had hoped, none are found. So that's an example of how to use regular expressions in MarcEdit. The hardest part about regular expressions is getting your head around the syntax and constructing the expressions. Actually using them in MarcEdit is very easy. Anne's already mentioned testing, but the great thing about being able to test in MarcEdit is that you try things, and if it doesn't work, you can undo it. So I hope that's given you an idea of how you can use the Export tab delimited tool and regular expressions in MarcEdit. And here are some resources if you'd like to learn more. Back to you, Joanne.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you all our panellists. That was a very interesting session. I've learned a lot that I wasn't aware of with MarcEdit. So in terms of questions, either type them in the chat, or if you're able or feel comfortable, please just unmute yourself and ask your question. We have got one question in the chat at the moment. Our council does not allow installing MarcEdit. Are you aware of any ways around this? Any of the panelists know any answer to that one?
MarcEdit, it was designed to be operated on a single PC. That's the way Terry Reese has written it. It's actually much more challenging to operate it in a networked environment than on a single PC. I could suggest using it outside your council server. You know, that's the only thing that I can suggest as a workaround for that. You know, how willing are you to evade your council restrictions, I guess is the question.
Thank you. Oh, another one. And someone suggested you could possibly download it onto a USB drive. I'm not quite sure how usable that would be. But that's possibly another option you could try. So have we got any other questions? Okay, I've got another question here. Has anyone used MarcEdit to add macrons to Te Reo Māori words, i.e. Māori, especially in headings and names, or comment on potential to do this?
We've used it in a really restricted sense to do that. So we've added the macron over Māori, for example, in subject headings. We would you'd have to specify your exact transformations that you wanted to happen. You know, so that you wanted na to have the macron over the a always in every single heading, or you'd have a long list of transformations. You couldn't set it up to replace every single a with a macron, because that's not the way Māori works. So if you had a one-to-one mapping list, you could absolutely set MarcEdit up to do that.
Okay, I've got another question here. How do I extract records to be able to work on records in MarcEdit? I manipulate incoming records, but I am working on records in my system. How do I get to them?
So I can answer at least for our system. So we use Ex Libris's Alma. There is a job that you can run to export a set of bibliographic records. So I would assume that you would have something similar, enabling you to export the records for your system. Just might take a bit of digging around.
Could you tell us which library management system you're working for, because that helps a bit. Okay, so in Kitui, which is Symphony software, you're going to need to run a report and possibly have a chat to the Kitui help desk about extracting your bib file and then reloading it.
Okay, we've had a comment. Just make sure you always work and save in UTF-8.
And the reason for that is that it screws up your diacritics if you don't.
And we've just had a comment from Catherine saying it's probably also important to add macrons as separate diacritics rather than a pre-consumptive characters where the diacritics is part of the character. Precomposed character, sorry.
So long as you're using Unicode for your diacritical, your macroned vowel, it should be okay. So long as your text is Unicode compliant, it should be okay.
Okay, we haven't got any more questions coming in through the chat at the moment. Okay, unless anyone else has got any other questions or comments, I'll bring the session to a close. Okay, well, thank you very much to our panelists, Natalie, Leonard, and Celeste. It was a very informative session. I've learned a lot and things I'd like to try. Okay, so just a message about next week. We'll be starting promptly at 11 AM. So try and get into the waiting room ready for that. And I'll now close with the karakia. Ka whakare ake te tapu kia runa, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai, homie huie taiti e. Thank you very much, everyone.